when my son's best friend confessed his feelings for me in an unexpected moment. I found myself in a situation like no other. Love, attraction, and emotions beyond my control created a night full of surprises, pushing me to face decisions that could change everything. Could I keep my composure and protect my relationship with my son? The story begins with a simple moment, but it will change everything. My name is Dinio, and I'm 40 years old. I live in a quaint little town in South Africa, where I share a humble, cozy home with my son, Lebo, who is now 24. Despite the modest size of our home, it is filled to the brim with love, laughter, and a sense of warmth that makes every day special. I work from home, running my small business where I make sweets and snacks, primarily for parties and celebrations. Baking is not just my job, it's my passion. Watching people smile as they savor my creations is a feeling like no other. It's more than just about business, it's about connecting with my community and spreading joy through simple acts of sweetness. But life, as it often does, took an unexpected turn. And things were never quite the same after my husband left me. He left for a younger woman, and I was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered reality. It was one of the most painful and devastating times of my life. The hurt was so deep that for a while, I couldn't see beyond the heartbreak. All of the things I thought I knew about love, marriage, and commitment suddenly seemed like illusions, fading before my eyes. The world, as I had known it, crumbled in an instant. There were days when the weight of the pain felt unbearable, and I found myself questioning whether I could carry on. But even during my darkest hours, I was never truly alone. My son, Lebo, stood by me, steadfast, strong, and unwavering. Though he was still young at the time, he was my rock. He was the one thing that kept me going when everything else felt like it was falling apart. We leaned on each other, finding solace in each other's presence. In the midst of all the pain, we found ways to laugh, to dream, and to keep moving forward. As the years have passed, Lebo has blossomed into a remarkable young man. Watching him grow and mature has been one of the greatest joys of my life. He's not just my son, he's my confidant, my greatest support, and a constant reminder that love can survive even in the harshest of times. Through all the ups and downs, we have built a life together filled with understanding, mutual respect, and hope. But amidst all of this, there's one person who brings an entirely different kind of feeling into our lives, Themba. Though he's now 25, I've known Themba since he was just a little boy. In fact, I can't remember a time when he wasn't part of our lives. He's been a constant presence, coming over to our home for as long as I can recall. I still vividly remember the very first time he came to play with Lebo. Over the years, I've watched Themba grow from a playful boy into a thoughtful young man. What began as a friendship between two children blossomed into something far deeper. Themba became more than just Lebo's friend, he became a true part of our family. Each time he visited, our home felt a little brighter, a little warmer. He brought with him a special energy, an infectious smile, and a sense of humor that could lift even the heaviest of spirits. Even during the difficult times, Themba always knew how to bring a bit of light into our lives. Now, as an adult, I admire the man he's become, calm, caring, and deeply considerate. Despite his continued role as Lebo's best friend, I can't help but notice something different about the way I feel when Themba is around. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is, But there's a warmth in the air whenever he steps into the room. Maybe it's the way he has matured. Or perhaps it's the way he carries himself. There's a quiet strength and understanding in him that I didn't see in the little boy who once ran through our yard. He has this way of making me feel seen. Of making me feel like I matter. It's not just the teasing or the jokes, it's the conversations we have. When he talks to me, it's as if he's acknowledging me as more than just Lebo's mother. He listens. He engages. And in those moments, I can't help but feel a sense of appreciation. I catch myself thinking about him more often than I should. And that confuses me. I enjoy the time we spend together. And I treasure the connection we share. But there are moments when I question whether it's appropriate to feel this way. After all, Themba is my son's friend. And I don't want to complicate things or make anyone uncomfortable. I remind myself that this is a delicate balance, one that I need to approach with care and respect. I want to preserve the simple, friendly dynamic that has always existed between us. And I do my best to keep everything just as it should be. One particular moment stands out in my mind. It was Themba's mother's big birthday celebration. And I was thrilled when she asked me to prepare all the sweets and snacks for the event. It was an opportunity to help. But also a chance to spend some time with Themba. Just the two of us. He came over to my house to assist in the kitchen. And together we spent the entire day baking. As we chopped, mixed, and baked, the conversation flowed effortlessly. We laughed, shared stories, and I found myself completely at ease with him. It was one of those rare moments where time seemed to slow down. And the simple act of cooking together created a bond between us that felt timeless. Themba spoke of his life, his dreams, and his experiences. And I couldn't help but enjoy every word. In those moments, it was easy to forget the complications that sometimes linger in the back of my mind. It was just two people, sharing a peaceful day in the kitchen. And it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Then, to my surprise, he casually admitted that he had always been drawn to older women. His words caught me off guard. He explained that older women were more understanding, more mature, and more capable of offering stability in a relationship. His confession made me laugh out loud. The unexpected nature of his statement pulling a chuckle from deep within me. It felt almost absurd to hear him say that. Yet beneath the laughter, I felt an unexpected pang of nervousness creeping into my chest. I couldn't help but wonder why he would say such a thing about me. Was he simply joking? Or did he actually mean it? The thought lingered in my mind, making it difficult to focus on the cookies and candies we were making together. I attempted to distract myself with the task at hand, focusing on the baking process. The warm, sugary aromas of the cookies filled the kitchen, comforting in their familiarity. Despite the laughter and the sense of joy we shared, there was a subtle tension beneath the surface. Themba's compliments, while flattering, also made me feel a little vulnerable. They made me feel special in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. But a quiet voice in my head reminded me that he was my son's close friend. I had to be cautious, to tread carefully and not allow the situation to become complicated or muddled by emotions that could be inappropriate. As we continued to work, I could feel the chemistry between us, this unspoken connection that seemed to have deepened over the years of our shared moments. Still, I pushed those feelings aside. It was nice, I reminded myself, to simply enjoy the company of someone who cared about spending time with me. But just as I thought I had regained control over my racing thoughts, something happened that took me completely off guard. Themba's mood shifted. For a brief moment. He stopped what he was doing and looked at me with a gaze that was serious, intense in a way I hadn't seen before. His tone was no longer light or playful, it was firm. As if he was about to share something important. He quietly confessed that, for a long time, he had admired me. He admitted that I was the type of woman he had always dreamed of being with. I froze. The words hung in the air between us. Thick and heavy. My heart skipped a beat. And my breath caught in my throat. I was completely taken aback. Not knowing how to react. The young man who had once been a child in front of me. The one I had watched grow up alongside my son. Now saw me in a way that I had never imagined. His words were so unexpected, so raw and genuine, that for a moment, I couldn't believe them. My mind raced. And all I could do was stare at him, trying to process the weight of what he had just said. Themba continued, sharing how much he admired my strength, my kindness, and the way I had always cared for Lebo. He spoke with such sincerity that it was impossible to doubt the truth behind his words. Part of me felt flattered, deeply moved by his admiration. It had been so long since anyone had looked at me that way, had spoken to me with such reverence. But another part of me was flooded with confusion and uncertainty. My heart was filled with a mixture of emotions, flattered. Yes. But also disoriented. How was I supposed to respond to this? I hadn't allowed myself to think about love or relationships since my husband left. It felt like a distant concept now. Something that belonged to another chapter of my life. I had grown accustomed to being alone. To not being the object of anyone's affection. And yet here was Themba. The young man who had always been like a second son to me. Confessing that he saw me in a way I never could have anticipated. As he continued to speak, my thoughts became even more muddled. Part of me wanted to believe him. To let myself bask in the warmth of his words. But the other part of me, the part that knew the complexity of our situation, urged caution. He was my son's best friend. If things went any further, it would change everything. I loved Lebo too much to jeopardize their friendship. To risk something that could never be undone. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts before I responded. Themba. I began softly, locking eyes with him. We can't do this. It wouldn't be fair to Lebo. I love him too much. And I can't risk ruining their bond. He listened quietly. His expression solemn. And I could see that he understood the weight of my words. He nodded slowly. His face showing a blend of regret and understanding. The tension in the room began to ease. And I felt a sense of relief wash over me. At least I had made my position clear. And I knew that Themba respected it. But just as I thought the moment was over, he surprised me once again. Before leaving, Themba asked for one simple thing, a hug and a kiss. Just as friends. His request was innocent enough. Or so it seemed. But in that moment, it felt like a question that held more weight than he could have realized. My heart raced. And my mind began to swirl with a storm of conflicting emotions. A hug and a kiss, just a simple gesture. Right? But could it really be just that? Or would it complicate everything even further? I hesitated. Part of me was drawn to him. The warmth of his embrace. The closeness that felt comforting in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Yet another part of me felt the cold sting of caution. The reminder that this was not a situation to take lightly. It was a fleeting moment. But one that could change the course of everything if I allowed it. I took another deep breath, steadying myself before I made my decision. Okay, I whispered, finally giving in to the pull of the moment. I hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of his presence. Then, quickly, I pressed a light kiss to his cheek. A gesture meant to be innocent, to close the door on any lingering feelings. As my lips touched his skin, I felt a flutter in my chest, a brief sensation of vulnerability. And yet I knew I had made the right choice. The kiss was a simple farewell, yet it carried a complexity of emotions I wasn't ready to face. As Themba left, I stood there in the quiet of the kitchen, my heart still racing, wondering if I had made the right decision, or if I had opened the door to something that would haunt me in the days to come. To my astonishment, Themba casually mentioned that he had already booked a hotel room for us to spend the night together. The moment he spoke, my heart skipped a beat, and a whirlwind of emotions washed over me: excitement, fear, confusion. I immediately felt a rush of warmth in my chest, mixed with an overwhelming sense of uncertainty. Before I could process everything, I instinctively shook my head, softly muttering, "No, I can't do that." His face immediately darkened, and I could see the disappointment flash across his eyes. It was as though a weight had settled between us. He stared at me intently, his expression earnest and almost desperate. "Please, just think about it for a moment," he urged, his voice pleading. "I've already paid for the room. I really like women like you." His words hung in the air, lingering like a delicate promise. I could see how much he truly wanted this, how much he hoped I would say yes. There was a sincerity in his gaze, a vulnerability that tugged at my heart. I could feel the deep pull of his desire for me, and for a fleeting moment, I wondered if perhaps I had misjudged the situation. He wasn't just offering me a night away from the mundane, he was offering something that felt like it could be deeply meaningful. A connection that could break through the walls I had carefully constructed around myself. But as quickly as that thought entered my mind, a wave of caution swept over me. I remembered my responsibilities, the bond one had with my son, and the walls I had built to protect myself after my husband's departure. I had spent so long trying to safeguard my heart from further pain that the thought of letting it open to someone else felt daunting, even if the temptation was real. I stood there, caught in the middle, torn between desire and self-preservation. The allure of the moment whispered in my ear, coaxing me to take a leap. But I resisted. I reminded myself that rushing into anything with Themba, no matter how enticing, could bring complications I wasn't ready for. I had worked hard to maintain the stability I had for my son and me, and the last thing I wanted was to jeopardize that fragile peace. His words echoed in my mind, making me feel both flattered and conflicted. Since my husband had left, I had lived in the shadow of loneliness. Though I had kept myself emotionally distant, there were moments when the absence of affection left an aching emptiness inside me. I was only human. After all, this was an opportunity to feel wanted again, to experience intimacy I hadn't allowed myself to have for so long. But deep within, a voice told me that I needed to tread carefully. My heart wasn't something to be given away lightly, and I didn't want to risk losing the one relationship that mattered most, my relationship with my son. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision press down on me. "I appreciate your feelings, Themba," I said softly, "but I can't go with you. It wouldn't be right." He nodded slowly, a sad but understanding expression crossing his face. He didn't argue or push, but the longing in his eyes was undeniable. I could tell that he respected my choice. even though it was clear that it wasn't the answer he had hoped for. The tension in the room was palpable. A silent struggle between what he wanted and what I knew I needed. For a long moment, we stood in that charged silence, the complexity of the situation hanging heavily between us. Then, to my surprise, Themba broke the silence. "I'll respect your decision," he said. His voice soft but resolute. After a few beats, we made our way to the hotel together. The air was thick with anticipation, and my nerves were a mess of conflicting emotions. At first, I was overwhelmed with uncertainty. What had I just agreed to? I hadn't fully understood the ramifications of this decision. But something told me that I needed to see this through. The hotel room felt strangely intimate, almost as though it was both a haven and a test. Would this night turn out to be a mistake? Or would it be a step towards rediscovering something I had lost long ago? As the evening unfolded, my initial nervousness gradually dissolved. I had expected awkwardness. But instead, there was a comforting ease between us. We talked and laughed as if we had known each other for much longer than a few hours. There was a warmth in Themba's presence, an unspoken understanding that allowed me to relax. It was the first time in a long while that I felt truly seen. As though I mattered to someone not just as a mother or a woman abandoned, but as Dinio, a person deserving of affection and attention. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt a flicker of freedom. The walls I had built around my heart slowly began to crumble, and I allowed myself to enjoy the moment. It wasn't just the fun we shared, it was the way he looked at me. The way he made me feel like I wasn't just an afterthought, but a person of value, worthy of care and attention. Themba's kisses were tender, each one gentle yet filled with an intensity that made me feel something deep inside. Every touch, every caress, reminded me that I was still capable of feeling alive. His lips on mine were not just a physical connection, they were a promise of warmth and understanding. A subtle reassurance that I wasn't alone in my desire to be loved. In that brief but powerful moment, I rediscovered a part of myself that I had long forgotten. It was as if his touch reignited something in me. Something that had been buried under the weight of responsibilities and heartbreak. For those few hours, I wasn't just a woman who had been abandoned, I was someone who mattered again. Someone who could feel the spark of passion and connection once more. By the time the night drew to a close, I realized how much I had missed the feeling of being truly seen, truly loved. Themba had not only given me an unforgettable experience but had reminded me of my own worth, of my own ability to love and be loved. It wasn't just about the night, it was about rediscovering a part of myself that had been lost for far too long. The way Themba held me was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't hasty, there was an unspoken care in his touch. A deliberate slowness as if he were savoring every moment with me. His hands, warm and firm, moved gently, tracing the curves of my body with such attention that each touch seemed to convey something deep and meaningful. I could feel that every second mattered to him. That he wasn't just going through the motions, but rather cherishing our time together. It made me feel seen, truly seen, in a way that I hadn't in so long. For the first time, I wasn't just another person in the room, I was important. Cherished. This was a new sensation for me. Something I hadn't realized I had been missing until that moment. There was an odd, yet comforting mixture of excitement and warmth that flooded through me. A feeling I had almost forgotten could exist. In that instant, I realized how long it had been since I had experienced a connection so genuine, so tender. My heart, once a place of emptiness and solitude after my husband left, began to stir again. I could feel the stirrings of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a very long time, a sense of being desired, of being cared for, of truly living. As I absorbed this closeness, I realized that it wasn't just the physical touch that affected me. It was the recognition that I had been craving this type of connection for so long. When my husband left, I thought I would never experience that sense of belonging again. But now, in Themba's presence, it felt as though the space in my heart that had once been hollow was slowly filling up. I felt a longing, a deep need to be wanted and cherished in a way that I hadn't let myself wish for in years. It was as if my soul was awakening from a long slumber. That moment, fleeting yet profound, made me realize how important it was to feel this way again. The warmth of that realization spread through me like a soft light, giving me hope that I could feel whole again, and that I deserved to feel this way. Every moment with him was an exploration of new emotions, new sensations. It was as if time itself slowed down, giving me the space to fully absorb everything. I could feel happiness swelling within me, bubbling up like a gentle tide. I smiled more than I had in years, laughed with a freedom I hadn't known in a long time. The weight of my worries seemed to dissipate, lifted away by the sheer joy of the present moment. Themba's presence was like a cool, refreshing breeze on a scorching day, soothing my heart and mind. It wasn't just a physical relief, it was an emotional one, too. In that brief time we shared, I allowed myself to let go of all the stress, the pain, the guilt, and simply embrace the happiness that surrounded us. There was a lightness to the air, a sweetness to the way we were together. Even though I knew that we couldn't sustain this forever, I cherished it deeply. It was an escape from the harsh realities of life, a moment where nothing else mattered but the two of us, sharing something pure. And though it was fleeting, it was enough to remind me that joy, even in its simplest forms, was still possible to find. But as the days passed, a strange unease settled into my chest. Guilt began to creep in, and I found myself replaying those moments over and over in my mind. What had I done? Was it something that would tear my family apart? Would Lebo ever find out? These questions gnawed at me, and I tried to push them aside, but they kept resurfacing. Then, one afternoon, my son came to me, his voice carrying an undertone of concern. "Mom," he began softly, "I've heard you've been spending a lot of time with Themba. Is there something you need to tell me?" My heart dropped into my stomach. I knew this was coming. I had been avoiding this conversation, but now there was no turning back. I looked into Lebo's eyes, trying to steady myself, and I knew that the only way to face this moment was with honesty. I told him everything, how Themba and I had gotten too close, how it was over now, and that I had done it all to protect him, to keep him from the pain of an uncertain situation. Lebo was quiet for what felt like an eternity, his eyes thoughtful, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "Mom, I understand. We all make mistakes. But I just hope this doesn't change things between me and Themba." Relief washed over me, a weight lifting off my shoulders. Lebo's words were calm, understanding, and the tenderness in his voice made me realize how much I had feared his judgment. But he wasn't angry. He wasn't disappointed, he was just trying to understand. I promised him that Themba and I would keep our distance, that things would return to how they were before. And over time, they did. Themba still visited. But now there was a distance between us, emotionally. Physically. We kept things respectful. Kept things light. I threw myself into my work and focused on maintaining the close bond one had with Lebo. Our relationship grew stronger. Built on trust and open communication. There were no more secrets between us. No more hidden tensions. Looking back, I realize that life often forces us to make difficult choices. And while those choices aren't always easy, they are sometimes necessary to protect the people we love. I chose to protect my son, our family, and our relationship. I chose to preserve what was most important to me. Lebo's ability to understand. His maturity in handling the situation. Gave me strength. In a world that constantly shifts beneath our feet. Our bond became even more solid. More unbreakable. I learned that love isn't always about being perfect, sometimes it's about doing what's right. Even when it's hard. It's about knowing when to let go. When to hold on. And when to make the hard decisions that ensure the happiness and well-being of those you care for. In the end, I chose to protect what matters most, the love and bond one share with my son. Sometimes, life throws unpredictable challenges at us. But it's the wise and thoughtful decisions we make that help us navigate through them. The feeling of being loved and cared for is something everyone longs for. But it's not always easy to find at the right time and with the right person. I've realized that true love is often about sacrifice and putting the needs of others before your own. In those moments of confusion, I learned that nothing is more important than family and genuine relationships. Always remember that whatever you do, your decisions should come from a place of respect and love for those closest to you. Don't let fleeting moments of vulnerability make you lose what you've built over the years. Thank you for watching this emotional story. If you found these life lessons helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next video.